Although there isn't any public.
JC.
We got
Well, I know,
JC.
JC, but he's not really public. He's ex officio,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, no more Dwight and Roxanne.
Well, Dwight's up in the,
Oh, is he in the?
he's upstairs,
upstairs,
but usually Roxanne comes.
I think they're both.
Upstairs.
I don't know, they could make the picnic.
Yeah, Dwight's in PDA. I saw him up there. I ran up there to say hello.
All right, everybody have their ducks in order. We ready to go? Excellent. All right, with the quorum of the board present, I call this meeting to order. Roll call of members. Commissioner Aritz.
Here.
Commissioner Timbo.
Here.
Commissioner
You got two?
Evans.
Here.
And Commissioner Baki is here as well. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks everyone for being here, and remember that the board appreciates input from the public. Here comes the public. We appreciate that. Yeah, you got everybody out of one. And if you have any comments throughout the board meeting and work session, please stand, state your name, address, and your comments will be heard. So, love to hear from you. All right, consent agenda. We'll get started right away. The consent agenda is made up of routine daily items that require board action but do not appear to have significant public impact. Items may be pulled from the consent agenda for separate discussion and vote by any board member. Today's consent agenda: approval of board meeting minutes from June 25, 2019. Payroll checks totaling of June totaling $89,553.09 and July $91,589.77. Maintenance and operation checks for June, number 24-737 canceled, 24-738 to 24-796 totaling $104,000.
There's a number missing there.
$590.28, and for July of number 797 to 24-853 totaling $297,688. The approval of the passenger facility charge of June of $60,000 and July of $70,000. And just a note to the members that the July in the packet shows a typo of July 2018 when the actually financial reports for June and July of 2019. So that is the current consent agenda. Any discussion? Motion?
I'll move that we accept the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second to accept the consent agenda as previously briefed. Any discussion? With no further discussion, let's call for a vote. All in favor of accepting consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The consent agenda is accepted. On to,
That is with the change, with the number put in there, it's 104,589
okay.
on that totaling for the June checks.
Okay, yeah, the one digit that was missing.
Yep, so 104,589.28.
89, so there's an 8 before the 9.
Yep.
Perfect. Anybody have a problem with that? Any members? No? Awesome. Good. We are to the director's report.
Yes, thank you. Welcome back from summer. A lot of things to report on, given that we haven't been together in a couple months. The Air Service meetings, the second annual Montana Rendezvous is going to happen the second week of September. And this year, Big Sky has donated rooms to bring the airlines, all the airlines into Montana. So I'll be down there for most of that week. It's a great lineup this year. They've got JetBlue coming, Delta, United, Southwest, Alaska is a late addition, and then a new airline by the name of Moxie that's got some roots back in the old Westpac days. One of the owners of Westpac, or founders of Westpac, is involved with that airline. I think they also had another airline that they were involved with, but it's an upstart airline that may or may not be flying here in the next couple of years. They are coming to the Montana Rendezvous. Their model is based on purchasing a bunch of the Airbus 212s and 220s, I guess it is, the mid-sized regional. And their idea would be to connect a lot of small markets. And so interesting theory, and we'll see what comes out of that. Anxious to talk to them and see what the plans are. If you remember Westpac, they were an incredibly fast-growing airline based out of Colorado Springs. They were taking, I think, 2 deliveries a month of 737s. They wanted to move to United's hub in Denver, and that kind of spelled their end when Southwest moved on top of them, and they were out of business pretty quickly after that. But interesting idea. We'll see what they have to say, but really good conference for Montana airports. I'm really excited to go out and see them. Oh, I didn't mention American will also be there. Our goal at that conference will be to present them with a community incentive package. We're working with businesses and individuals around the community right now to develop an incentive pool. We've got quite a few businesses involved with pledges, and our goal at that meeting would be to present those to a couple of the airlines with the goal of getting one of them to provide us a letter of support for a new small community air service development grant. So the way the timeline will work is we'll have an incentive pool. We'll present to the airlines at the September meetings. The new SCASD application is expected to come out by December, maybe January. In the interim, we'll probably take a headquarters visit. That's generally what it takes to nail down a support letter. Once you have a support letter, it generally indicates the airline would start service. There's a few exceptions to that. They don't always do it, but it's pretty likely. So we'd have a good indication that we might have some additional air service in the future if we were able to get a letter. Then that application will come out sometime in the end of the year, first of next year, and from there we would expect a grant award sometime this summer. And if we can get the grant, then we would have a full pool of dollars to provide for new air service in 2021. In the interim, we've got another low-cost candidate that we're pursuing for service next summer. Who that was? Good. And so we're going to be pursuing that lead also. And so we might potentially have some new air service for next summer, and then potentially the summer after that with the small community air service development grant. So a lot of work being done. Shane from the chamber and I are making most of the calls out in the community, trying to get meetings, presentations, and pull in some pledges. So far, I feel like it's going pretty well. Since the last time we've done this, there's been a lot of businesses that have been purchased locally or no longer exist in the community that donated before, and so the funnel is narrowing. I mean, think what happened in the retail sector. The mall was a contributor last time. There's just some less business than there was a few years ago, and so we are trying to. We haven't had a number of businesses that have stepped up and increased their pledges so far, which is really encouraging too, and so. We'll see when the dust settles here in about a week or so where we are prior to those meetings.
Is there a cutoff date where you need the commitment to?
Well, ideally, it'll have its best bang for the buck by early September, so really next week, because when we get down to see the airlines, I think the first day of meetings is the 11th. By then we want to have everything in place and in our presentation so we can show the airlines.
Do you have a number right now?
We're about 100,000 shy of our goal. That's kind of where we are right now, and so a lot of that is, like I said, there's a lot of the big folks like James Talcott Construction, for instance, was a major donor last time. That organization's gone through some changes, and so not really available in that capacity right now. And so that's one example. They were a major contributor, one of the top 10 contributors last time, and there's some changes there. We're still working on a couple other area businesses that we think could step up in a big way, but as of yet, we haven't nailed down presentations or anything to them. So,
is there much from out of Great Falls?
Out of town, you mean? No, nothing from out of the community. Just everything's based.
Have we tried like the Golden Triangle? Or?
We haven't really. Last time, Cut Bank Economic Development did contribute. They were a contributor last time, but we haven't. I was talking to Shane about that the other day, how we might contact that group, find out if they'd be willing to donate again, and so he was tracking that one down. But most of it's pretty Great Falls centric, and it makes sense. I mean, we get the majority of the economic impact from it, but there are some travelers outside the community that benefit.
Have you looked at the big major commercial ranchers like What's the multi-million-dollar ranch just to the west of here up by Shoto? The bar. Anyway, it's like multi-million big, we're talking big ranching operation.
No, we haven't.
There's several of those between
guys.
us, between Lewistown and Shoto.
Yeah, and I don't know who we know that has that policy either. Primarily, that we've worked this last couple times through the chamber, and so, most of the contacts we have are through the chamber members, or GFDA has been involved a couple times, and they had us do a presentation a couple weeks ago. But yeah, and then Rotary had us come in too, and so, it's mainly the service organizations locally. We've been farming for those, but if anyone has any contact numbers, we'd be happy to reach out and try to capture some of the guys, or even names. We try to track down a contact number, particularly if they're using aviation to come in. Paul Zupp has been a big supporter of Missoula, and of course Big Sky is a ridiculous supporter of Bozeman. In fact, they do all the air service development for the airport. So, other things, just on a construction update, quite a bit going on right now. The fog seal project is now underway. If you go out there right now, they're doing sort of nooks and crannies here and there. Some of the paint's been moved. The fog seal is overnight, so we've got some overnight runway closures right now. And while we get that done, so far it's been going pretty smoothly.
Yep.
We expect probably 3 more weeks, and they'll be wrapped up. Probably a couple weeks. The PAPI is gone for the time being. It's been taken down, and the grading's being redone on a little hill the PAPI's set on. The curbing around the PAPI's being pulled down. Probably a couple more weeks of work there too to get us down to flat level again. With the removal of that arrestor, the 4th arrestor cable barrier. The SRE building largely done. We've got some changes to the fire system that still have to be made, but the floor's been epoxy coated now and more or less ready to move in once that fire change is done. We're still waiting on the mezzanine rack. It's being fabricated, so we'll probably have that October, I would think.
Yeah, I think a month or so.
Month or so will be in place there. All the utility work is done down at that end. So we're in pretty good condition with last year's construction. Fog seal going fairly well. We've still got to put in the runway weather information system. That'll be a puck that goes in runway 17 to give us real-time weather updates on the pavements. That'll be a few weeks out too. But largely the construction's going well. The terminal work, you probably saw the carpet, the walk-off carpet's all replaced now. We've got that floor routed out around those entryways such that it's flat. We don't have that little metal stripping anymore that keeps getting broke, so that's a major improvement. The door parts are on order, and it sounds like they should be here next month, so by late October we should have all those doors replaced. We've got one that seems like it's completely broken now outside of Delta, so we did this just in time. Not sure we could have gotten that one fixed. So all those doors will be replaced here in the next couple weeks, and the terminal's looking really good. The work down here in the emergency area where we had that flood last winter is now complete. That looks really nice, really nice finish on the bottom of that concourse now over here on this area. So a lot of that's done too, or all that work's done too. So pretty much done there. Did I miss anything there, Rod?
Fuel farm.
Oh yeah, fuel farm.
We got bids on the tank removal there. We removed 9 of the 11 tanks in the old fuel farm. So we got bids. Came in pretty good, just 2 bidders, but that work will probably start October 1st or so. Shoemaker Trucking and Excavating is going to do the work. So by October, end of October, those will be out.
Barring a bunch of contaminated soil, which is always a possibility in
Yeah.
these cases, we think we'll be about 35% below budget on that one. At one of the board meetings, somebody remarked we never report being below, we're always report when we're above. So there's when we were below pretty substantially. I think we'll save probably around $70,000, maybe $80,000 on that project, barring a major unexpected contaminated soil, which we don't think, but it can always happen.
You never know.
Anything else?
You covered most, or all the rest of it. So.
Great. We're awaiting our TIF reimbursement from the city. I think we've checked all the boxes and crossed all the T's now. Maria's pretty confident we've finally gotten everything in. We have until the end of this year to get those dollars before they turn into a pumpkin. About $107,000 in TIF reimbursement for that waterline complex that we built down there to support the new hangar and get utilities down into the private hangar area. So quite a bit of money put back in the coffers when that comes in. And then the last thing I wanted to mention is we have an offer of a donated Charlie Russell portrait. It's quite large. I think it's 8 by 4. Pretty sizable piece of art. It's the profile picture that you see around town quite a bit. I think they used it for the banners in the downtown area over the summertime. And a local person approached us about displaying it in the terminal. Their thought was seeing if the Charlie Russell Museum would make some type of educational plaque about Charlie Russell. Just to remind the board, a few years ago, we kind of adopted a policy of no additional stuff from the public to display. As you know, we insure a lot of what's here. From time to time, we have to move it, and that's been a sore spot with some of the collection owners. When we have to move it, they don't feel like there's enough space, or they don't like the space as much. And in general, we don't have a lot of wall space. And with that last remodel, blowing out the back of the building and putting in windows, and then a window down the middle of the terminal, there's not a lot of blank wall space. When I walked around the other day and tried to think where we might put something that big, the one thought I had was potentially on the brick wall when you come out of gate 3 and 4 across from Delta and Alaska. There's a large brick wall there. And the ceiling height is no taller than this, so that portrait will be a little oversized for that size wall, but I think we can make that work if the board's interested in that. And so we just wanted to toss that out there, and if you want to debate it on another working session, we can. We just got called on this late last week, and I told the individual, I said, well, let me get it on the mention to the director in the director's report, and if the board wants to pick it up in the next work session, we can. But it's your discretion as to whether or not we even want to entertain that. It's a sizable piece of work. Obviously, we have a lot of Charlie Russell stuff in the terminal now. We invited the museum to do 2 murals. We have one inside security and then one just outside the exit that's visible when you stand looking up the exit. So we do have Charlie Russell sort of represented here. We have Lewis and Clark represented a couple places. The children's play area that's planned will be Lewis and Clark themed. We have those portraits outside the secure bathrooms, which are scenes from the journal that were done in portrait form. And then there's a large Corps of Discovery, I guess you call it a map, that's down in the Allegiant hold room down there that shows where they went through Montana, and some caricatures of the folks from the Corps down in that area. And so we have kind of balanced the terminal out with some of the historic stuff that we have in the community. And I don't know if there's any thoughts on that portrait or not.
So realistic, or the real problem is, the issue is it coming in as a public piece versus as part of the museum piece. And
it's owned by individuals,
right,
not by the museum.
But if we got the individual to donate it to Charlie Russell Museum, and then they had the control of it to put it where we think it might be the most helpful for supporting the museum, would that
We can always take it. I think that the issue we've had in the past is just we get a lot of calls for donated things. I mean, it's not as prevalent as it was a couple years ago. I mean, we used to get, I would say at least a call a month, people wanting to display different things. Some of them were related to the airport. Some of them, were exotic animals, for example. I think there was one offer of a full-size zebra. And so, I mean, so the litany of things, goes from the ridiculous and sublime, right? And so, what the board said a few years ago, probably 5 or 6 years ago, is, we have what we have in terms of collections from private individuals, and we don't want any more. Just because we know, again, we'll be remodeling here in the next few years, and, we've got to protect those things. We can't always ensure that the public won't deface those things. And then when they get moved, there's some heartaches from time to time, with the folks that have donated about, not understanding the airport isn't a static environment. We can't always guarantee things will be where they are, or even that we would have room for them in the future. When we go to the new terminal eventually, obviously a lot of this stuff's got to be reconsidered. And so those are the litany of problems, and it just, the last time we talked about it, it was just kind of decided that we'll just kind of put it on hold that we have what we have and we don't want more right now.
Well, I realize it was a different board composition at the time, but I'm happy to stay with that decision. I mean, I was around when you were talking about some of those things, and maybe at a point in the future, with the work done here, we'd be looking to redecorate, or whatever you want to say, but to just piecemeal in things and deal with all those issues. I mean, if we have to revisit it periodically because it isn't a policy, I'd still be in favor of staying with what we are doing.
I'd support that.
I think that's not a bad decision. I mean, again, we'll be making quite a bit of dust and debris here in a couple of years when if we choose to go ahead and blow out the back of the terminal there and add that new bag claim system. That's going to be an intrusive project, and again, protecting all of these things during that time, isn't easy. I mean, some of these things have value to them, and protecting them, particularly paintings and pictures like that, it's not always easy. And so, that was what the board said before, and unless there's a willingness to bring it back in an official capacity next month, I think we would just reiterate what the board's decided in the past.
I agree with that completely. Is the marketing company that we have putting all the other stuff, do they handle the Charlie Russell Museum
They don't.
exhibits?
They don't. When we did the terminal remodel a couple of years ago, the direction from the board was we wanted to preserve 2 or 3 walls for community-oriented messaging, and the thought at the time was to get the museums involved. One for the Charlie Russell and one for the Lewis and Clark History Museum. The Lewis and Clark History folks, we had a wall for them and they had designed it, they couldn't get the donors for it, and so the Russell guys swooped in and took that one, which is right across from the checkpoint. And so we've been waiting for the Lewis and Clark folks to get their funding together, and then they approached us about the children's play area. And so that's kind of where we are, is they're close to having their funding in place. I think they were talking about construction even this year yet. So they'll have their piece. And then we had told the advertising firm at the time, in the new terminal, we're going to preserve these things. And that's another good point. As we take up wall space, we eliminate the potential for income-producing wall space in the future. As Oakwells gets on their feet, maybe we could get them interested in approaching local artists about some paid-for display type of art on the walls. It might be, many airports in Missoula has a big collection of local art that's for sale, and they've got all the contact information in the gift shop. As we use up wall space, it eliminates the possibility of that type of thing in the future. So definitely things to think about.
I guess I'd go back to the individual and say, if you want to donate it to the Charlie Russell Museum and they want to use it for one of their walls that we have, that would be fine.
Yeah,
We wouldn't get involved in that.
Yeah, and their walls are pretty well, they're painted up. If you go out there, they've got them all imaged. They're pretty full. But we can certainly take that approach to it. All right, and that's all I have on the director report.
Questions, comments? Well, just one quick question on the Moxie, the new Moxie.
Uh-huh.
Do you know anything about them? Where are they going to base out of? Where are they going to try to?
None of those decisions have been made. All they've talked about is their model is to buy larger regional jets. Kind of a Southwest of a smaller, although if you think about where Southwest started, 130-seat planes, it's not all that different. It's just now the Southwest planes got bigger. So yeah, they're not really saying much. In fact, everyone has, when we were on the director's call last week amongst all the airports, everyone was very curious to talk to them about what their model is. Certainly, as we all know, there's a lot of opportunity in the mid-sized market. There's still a lot of hubs like St. Louis, even a Kansas City, where there's a lot of capacity remaining that hasn't been absorbed. And you have a lot of radius markets around there which have lost service over the years. TWA, look at the networks that are missing, Reno Air, TWA. If you kind of went and looked at their markets, even Northwest to a certain extent, where they hubbed out of and what cities they went to, there's opportunity in those markets ready-made that's been proven some 10 or 15 years ago with how those airlines operated. And so, Kansas City, if I were putting the airline in place, a Kansas City or something like that, a major city where you could funnel people from all over the West and Midwest, maybe something like that would make sense. And that plane has the range from a mid-continent city to hit some of the coastal markets, which are huge markets. And so, maybe there's an opportunity there. But yeah, I think we'll all be interested in hearing what they want to talk about.
And this is the last week for United going to Chicago.
It is, yep.
Are we losing any other service?
Delta will step down the third Salt Lake City at shortly after the Chicago flight, because over 2 weeks. We did gain some service. Alaska Airlines is going to add a second flight 4 days a week. So this fall, they're on a two-a-day right now, but instead of stepping all the way down to one, we'll retain 4 days a week where they're going to continue to fly. They published that through December now, so that's a good increase. Allegiant has a slightly smaller schedule, but if you look at the overall seats, our seats are actually up going through the end of the year because of the Alaska change. And then Denver will step down. No, actually, Denver retains 3 days a week.
Until January.
Yeah, probably January, yep. So that's a ways off yet. But yeah, Minneapolis will go back to the smaller planes, go back to a 76-seat frame instead of the Airbus, which has been their model the last 3 years. That Airbus kind of came with the Delta, or I'm sorry, the United Chicago service when it went to Daly a couple of years ago. And so, yeah, so smaller Minneapolis, one less Salt Lake, and then eventually Denver down to 2, but Alaska up to 4 a week on the second flight. So all in all, an improvement. Haven't seen that. So far year to date, we're flat. We haven't really had an increase at all, but when we get through August with the addition of the Chicago flying to the end of the month, there should be a small increase, and then by the time we get to the end of the year, hopefully we'll see an increase with the additional Alaska flying.
So with this being the last year of the Chicago SCADSI, is there United stated any intent to do it next year?
We haven't gotten that far yet. They haven't sent out July results. Those will probably be coming anytime. Now, June was not great, but last year was so stellar that in comparison, last year, June, flight average 92% load, which is as high as you can get, given weather cancellations and people missing flights or just deciding they're not going. It's as high as you can really expect to get. And so, I think we'll see a pretty strong case for continuing that flight. It wouldn't surprise me if they reduce the schedule some. Maybe, I don't know how August will do. We'll see. The good thing is they've dropped the plane back to a 700 in the last couple of weeks, which might be a model that would work for us next year. If we could get into a 700 and extend that season some, that might be the right size plane to make that market work through Christmas.
So that's a 76-seater?
Yeah. So, that I didn't think their 76-seaters had the range because some of their 76-seaters were not the long-range version. And so a few years ago when we were looking at the market, they didn't have the airplane that could do it. So I'm not sure who they're leasing. Do you know who's flying those 76-seaters, Rob?
Compass?
No, I'm not sure.
We'll have to look. It might be Endeavor.
It might be Endeavor.
Yeah.
Go Jets.
Go Jets.
GoJet, oh,
yeah.
okay.
So the ones they had access to a few years ago didn't have the range, we were told. It might be temperatures too, in the middle of summer that, they didn't have the range.
Gas on it.
Yeah, so now we're seeing a 76-seater, hopefully that'll work.
Should be perfect. And then are we having to do a lot of fund matching to make it pay for that?
Yeah.
Ticket prices fairly high enough, or are we having to put a lot
Ticket
of-
prices are down this summer from last year, so I expect we'll go through the full contract incentive for this year. The chamber is probably going to have to pay out the full incentive amount based on June's performance.
Thanks. All right, into the first stuff. Real quick before we get that, coming up on the agenda items, are there any agenda items that present a conflict of interest and/or consequently require any of the board members to abstain from discussion and vote? Everybody's good? Excellent. Okay, with that, the Electric City, oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry. We're going to go ahead and jump over just because we have
Oh, perfect.
in here for the work session, the terminal refresh project, exterior policies. So we'll just need to close this and go over.
Okay. So we want to,
Don't adjourn it, just We're just gonna pause it here at 1:31.
Okay. So we're pausing it, we're going into the work session to do the,
Terminal exterior upgrades. It's the first item on your agenda there for the, I'm sorry,
for the Oakwell's proposal.
It's item
Sorry,
number
number 2.
on work session.
Okay. Terminal refresh project exterior concept.
Yep. While these guys are getting set up, this is LPW team Tim Peterson. And and you may recall back in the spring, we talked about putting some terminal refresh projects together. One of the bigger projects that we want to take on in this program is some exterior modifications. Back many years, there's been some concern over the exterior appeal of the building. Obviously, 1970s building, it has its own sort of nostalgic appeal, but we'd like to update that to a more modern look. And so we've engaged LPW in last year's budget to look at some concepts for how we might make the terminal improvements. This project, all things being equal, right now we think we would take this on in 2022, 2023, but we need some design direction on what the board's interested in order to make that happen. And so we would need to get on that design in the next year or two, because this would also go with the baggage claim project. This would be our big project for the next round of terminal improvements, along with the bag claim stuff and the other interior projects. So we're just looking for some guidance on concepts, and we asked them to put together a couple and just see what could be done with the building.
And if anybody wants to move up, if you can't see it, feel free to.
And I'm wondering if everyone can see from way back there, even when I'll open up.
Hopefully you
one
make
here.
those pictures bigger.
Yeah.
No,
We really don't want you to see it. Okay, so this is a video again put together of the existing as it looks right now to give everybody an idea of what, when you see the new that we proposed, how different it really is. And Caitlin, you want to come up here too? You can talk a little bit about our thoughts. And so pretty much we talked a lot about trying to lighten the look of the airport. It's very imposing when you drive up to it right now with all the concrete. And also maybe tie it to the addition, the terminal addition that we did 8 years ago?
Yep. 2013.
Well, I guess it wasn't that long.
Yep.
But to try and make the airport work together instead of, because right now it kind of feels like two buildings stuck together.
Just be quiet about the people in a second.
That's what he likes.
These are fine architectural choices.
Oh, boy. Maybe spray painting.
Okay, so option one, I'll just run through the video here. So what we're showing there is taking those huge concrete columns and taking them out at the front, at the face of the building, and lightening the whole canopy, bringing some natural light into the entries, possibly putting like pyramidal skylights over the top of each entry to bring light down, and using some metal panels to kind of tie it back to the other side of the building.
Can you rerun that?
Yep.
Hey Tim, so we've got those 3 strong rectangular columns that are the air ventilation
Yeah, right
systems and the
here,
elevator shafts.
here.
Is that painted there? Is that what you've got going
No,
on?
so what we were proposing is cladding those with the metal as well.
Metal also.
But the existing, this
Yeah.
portions would be, I know we had discussed about doing a stain on the concrete just to kind of tie in those warmer colors.
Because the concrete itself it has like a wood grain to it, so we were thinking maybe
You
going
can see it
to
here in the frame.
something of a more natural brown tan that would kind of make the building feel less concrete, I guess. I'll run this one more time.
Option one.
And you can kind of see the pyramidal skylights here at each entry. And incorporating some wood, possibly, with the canopy itself, warming it up. And actually, in the addition here, we did start to bring some wood in over there too, so kind of tying it together. Any thoughts or comments on that one?
I like the natural light because I know right now those tunnels are really dark.
Mhm.
And especially at night, the whole front area.
Yeah.
Well, and it would light it up
It's
really
really
nice
dark.
too. At night, those canopies would kind of give you that Denver airport feel when you're flying in with a little bit less.
Yeah,
of the
we
Denver
were
airport.
thinking with the LED options now, we could even put some lighting in there that we might change based on the weather. Maybe in, in wintertime, you have blue, and in the springtime, green, summertime, red. Just something fun on the front of the building. I mean, many of these, like even the LED lights we have in our office now, the color changes. Not that dramatic, but you can go from, the blue LED light to sunlight color. And then there's a red tint to it. And, we could do something in there relatively inexpensively that would give it some feel and light it up and make the exits or the entrances really easy to find at night when you're driving over to the parking lot.
The other thing that's a little hard to see on this video, when the addition was done in the room upstairs, these huge concrete columns that are part of the storefront weren't incorporated on the upper level, and it makes it a lot more contemporary and light and open. So we're proposing as part of this, we do the same thing on these lower levels. Make it, like I said, a lot more contemporary looking. So then the second option.
I like the way you've got the sidewalk cover sloped to the south so that in the wintertime you get a lot more sun from that low angle sun, but in the summertime you'll have the shade. That will work out.
Yeah.
Yep.
It almost looks like, it reminds me of the Lewis and Clark Museum. I mean, it has a similar feel to it.
It does. So then our second concept has a lot of similarities. We're just kind of more or less working with colors here. And you can see the towers that John was talking about. Instead of going with the brown, we actually incorporated some blue. It's a little bit of a different feel.
A lot more cladding on that one too.
Yep.
Yeah.
Did you clad the entire front rectangle? Is that what that is?
No, so this remains concrete, but
Concrete.
we took that upper addition and clad
Cladded
that.
that also?
Yep.
So this cladding would probably match the metal panels that we did on the addition for the terminal in the back. The more of a silver color.
It's like pretty much similar to that metal on our seal back there. It's that, if you're not familiar with it.
I was just thinking that the seal would look really good on top of that concrete clad, that big open space right now. Put the airport seal right in the middle of that.
Oh, on this?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one thing John was talking to us about too, wanting to do something with this. And so we were playing with a gable option possibly. We weren't really sold on it, so we didn't even want to show it to you today. But we can still explore that. But I see what you're saying, because there's something about this that needs to.
It's
Yeah,
just
it's
so
missing.
square.
So
and
blocky.
Yeah, and one of my thoughts was if you gabled it and make it look similar to the skylight. Now that the water tower's gone, you see this building, a lot more of this building when you're driving in. The water tower used to obscure it, but now you see it coming from a long way away, and you see that skylight pretty predominantly, that big triangle up there. So my thought was to pull some triangles forward on that gate, on that facade in the front, and then also on those passenger entries to try and move away from the blockiness. But I know what he's saying. I mean, it is kind of hard to incorporate that kind of feature up there.
Without feeling like it's stuck on
Yeah.
a parapet or something. So we need to
Seal and pull
explore.
it out and then put backlighting on it.
You could.
That would be really cool.
Oh,
Yeah.
Down the back.
And actually, that would do a lot, I think, to break this up. I think
Yeah.
that's a good idea.
And I like the Pasco model. They've got their airport code on one of the towers that lights up. I think that'd be kind of cool. Our big GTF down one of those towers.
Oh, that would be cool.
Yeah.
I think I like the other color better.
Do you?
I like the
This is
wood.
a little dark.
Okay.
See, I like the dark.
Personal preference.
Yeah.
I like both of them, actually.
I mean, this is contemporary urban, where if you go back to the last
Sure.
one, I think that's more prairie.
Starts to
Great
bring a little more
Falls-
Montana.
Yeah.
Great Falls, Montana. Can you go back to the last one?
Yeah. I think we've got some stills in here too.
This one says Chicago to me for some reason.
Hopefully it says Chicago to the Chicagoans. So you've got some different landscaping there that looks like they
Yeah.
bouldered up the front a little bit, which I think that's smart. A little more natural looking than what we've got down there now.
Mhm.
I like that. The tones to it, and it really says Great Falls Prairie. Golden Triangle.
You can definitely explore the seal here.
Yeah.
I think the bigger it gets to, the easier it is to understand it, I think.
Yeah.
That would help that too.
Sure. I was just gonna say, I like how they've done the Great Falls International Airport,
Yeah.
just like on the other side. We kind of got it in that header board,
Yeah.
which is what we did with the other side.
And then put a lighted GTF or a GTF
Yeah.
down
Yeah.
one of the
Yeah.
columns. Oh, that'd be,
Maybe if you get rid of that seal there on that column, that
Yeah.
would get a floor to ceiling, that would, that would kind of cool.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so these are works in progress. We can make some changes. Any other thoughts that you have, let us know, but.
Did you guys look at all of putting the triangles on top of the 3 also?
Up here?
Yeah.
No.
No.
I don't know. To me, it really draws attention to them.
Yeah,
We can easily do it and show you. Let's just do it.
just a thought.
Yeah.
We'll show you.
No, that's all right.
No, I easily can throw them on
Let's-
there and we'll send
Yeah,
it to you.
we'll do it, John. It's will seriously take us 10 minutes.
What triangles you talking about?
So we've got the triangles on top of the entrances now also, the
Little pyramidal skylights,
Yeah.
cowl wall with a translucent glass.
to add some light up there.
But I see what you're saying, driving up to be able to have light on the top.
Well,
somehow.
think of it night, I mean,
Yeah.
in the daytime, if you did it really light and had a fog
Yeah.
panel that would light up, just something to give it some uplighting. look to it.
Subtle,
Mhm.
maybe. We'll try it. See.
Yeah.
And we can also do this at rendering at night to kind of see what that would look like too.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I kind of am drawn more to that one. So I like both.
See what 3 is, I can't wait.
Huh?
You got a third one?
Two.
No, that's it.
Oh,
That's it for
no.
now.
All right.
We had a third with a gable in the middle that we
Yeah.
just really weren't happy with yet.
Yeah.
Is there a
But-
way we can bring our buffalo and our grizzly bear out to the front of that?
No.
Put them up on top of the new skylight there?
No, out in front in the drive path part.
Oh, Lord, no.
No.
Someone almost got to him last week with a rental car. He was on their way in the boulder field.
We still need to turn the grizzly bear 45 degrees so you can see his head when he comes.
Face, yeah.
No, I think we thought originally there might be additional art at some
Yeah.
later juncture,
Ah.
not moving those two, yeah.
Yeah, we have a couple other concepts we talked about with bringing some more art in. So what do you guys think about that carport? Can you flip back to the existing?
Yeah.
There's a
The whole thought is to try and lighten up the front end because it's so big and heavy. And that carport, to me, is one of the bigger, heavier elements.
Do you want the actual walk around, John?
Oh, I think that'll, that kind of does it.
Are you talking the cover to the sidewalk?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I don't like that.
So,
This one.
The only thing I wonder, Tim, I mean, my initial thought, and I'm just now seeing this, we walked through these a couple weeks ago, but I kind of wondered, could we put that slanted element in line with where the current one is? And then leave those entryways out there so that, when you have those lit pyramids, that they would stick out more? You know what I'm
So
saying?
the actual lit pyramid would be here,
Right.
out in the face. Yeah, we could still do something a little different with these so they match. with
Even
what
if you
we're
just
doing.
clad them.
And then, so then the sloped canopies just between these.
Right, and the slope could even extend out beyond the pyramid, but at least that way those pyramids, when they light up at night, you're gonna see where that entrance is.
I think that's great. Good
So
idea.
you're saying actually these concrete stay, we're just gonna put the slope over the top of it?
Well, we might redo this form still, but I see what you're saying is that you'd want the pyramidal skylight to be out at that
Out,
face.
yes.
We're trying to get rid of these big concrete columns as part of what we're doing, but we could still do that with the skylight out front here.
Yeah, I mean,
I've had a problem with right now because we've kind of got it sloped in front of it. It obscures the
terminal.
pyramid skylight.
Yep, and that's what I was saying is, So if we suck that carport back into where it is now, so that it extends out, but it doesn't, it's not in front of the entryway.
Yeah.
You know, it could still come out as far as you want, but those entryways would still be visible, you know, because it basically would consume the same space that we have right now. What they've got is kind of that in front of it.
Oh, I see that.
Yeah, see,
Yeah.
so this would go away, this would pull in front. I'd probably slope this a little different too, so it doesn't overpower these skylights, but this whole pyramid skylight would come to where these columns are out in front now. And then we'd have the canopy in between them, which I like that.
Welcome to the Great Falls International Airport.
Yeah, we'll play with that a little bit.
My only issue is wintertime snow. If we take too much of the covered walkway and put it that high, you're gonna have
Snow underneath.
huge snow piles underneath on the sidewalk.
I think we're gonna bring the
Bring it
slope down a
down.
little bit.
I mean, I like the slope idea, especially for sun in the winter.
Yeah,
And I like the mountainish feel of it, especially in the wood color. The, you know, the snow problem.
I think we can split the difference there between flat and what we're showing and still be better than what we got, so.
Yeah, because the wind does come towards that.
Yeah.
Of course, it gets under there anyway. I mean, it goes all the way to the door, but
Is there a better way to do that, where we enter 90 degrees in, or we do it to keep the wind problem?
You could. The only thing is it gets to be kind of confusing for
yeah,
people that are
it-
coming in the airport.
there is-
I was wondering about that today too. And
It's not, it doesn't really drift in the door that I've ever seen, Rod, and, you know, jump in here. I mean, it, you know, there'll be a little bit of skip of snow just outside the door, but, you know, we have to shovel under there anyway.
With the southwest wind, it fills that in. Not clear up to the doors typically.
Okay. Well, we'll take another run at it.
Oh, I like it though.
Everything's still the same with airport security regulations for distances from vehicles and all that stuff?
They haven't changed any of that yet. They always have that ability to go to, you know, red, and then we would have to close some of the short-term parking, if not all of the short-term parking.
Yeah,
would
it
be
gets 300 feet.
Yeah, but they haven't gone to red, and, well, they've never gone to red.
But today we're in compliance.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is there any discussion about getting rid of the hump curve on the parking area, where the cars park before and then the cars park on the hump and then bounce out to the middle? And
It does tend to be a little bit weird, I suppose, for people
In the
driving
winter
along.
time, people do park on, I mean, it's a nice feature now.
You mean that curve?
yeah,
That slows the traffic down.
Well, that's true,
if
too.
you can see it, yeah.
I mean, not so much the hump, but that curve in the
Right.
road out
Yeah.
there slows the traffic down, which has been kind of problematic, I think, over the years.
Boy, I tell you, yeah, in Colorado Springs had a straight shot, and I mean, they would zip through there.
You gotta put a speed bump on.
You know, those are a pain on the plow.
Oh, I know.
You know, it sends you to the moon on the plow. I always like the removable speed bumps, but I've never been able to talk Rod into this. I got the ones that are made out of milk jugs or
Yeah.
something, and
And that
you
rubberized.
rebar them down, and then you take them up in the winter time.
Right.
I like it.
Okay.
That one a lot.
Okay, well, I'm thinking we'll take it back, and I don't know if you want us to present at the next board meeting with the changes, but we could do that.
You know, that would be great. Actually, we're at half strength today.
Okay.
You know, and I'm sure the other guys would kind of like to see it, and, you know, and we just kind of, like, we're early in the conceptual
Yeah.
design, but it'd be great to know kind of what direction we're going, because we start some design elements over the next couple of years, and we need to figure out what we're going to do with selection, because currently we don't have a contracted architect, and so we'll need to figure that out too. A lot of steps to do in the next couple of years as we prepare for that next terminal project.
It's exciting, I like that.
Great.
It can be done, we can modernize,
Yeah.
you know, and I think the cost, you know, you guys are gonna put something together for that?
Once we get past that, you know, this is close to what we're thinking, then we'll put together a rough budget for it.
Cool, yeah. Kind of give us some ideas what to plan for, so we get the financial planning done.
Yeah, I think we said no more than 50,000, right?
That'll be the first gazebo, right?
Yeah, that's one of the skylights.
Architect booths. That'll take the logo off. It's
Right.
Okay.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
All right, are we
You're just going back to the. board.
re-adjourned? I mean,
At 1:51.
All right. So, we already talked about nobody has a conflict of interest, so with that, let's start. Our first agenda item is Electric City Aero lease assignment.
Yes, Laura, do you want to cover that one?
Sure, this is just Electric City Aero. They started their lease with us back in '07. It's a 20-year lease with a 10-year option on it. So someone has expressed an interest in buying that from Jan, so he would just like to assign that over. So there, after the extension, it'll go through to July 31st, 2027. We do have it written in the agreement that we won't withhold that right to assign unless there's some reason that we should do that. And we do not see any reason why we shouldn't let them go ahead and assign that lease. So that's what we would recommend.
So that is the south end of the large double hangar
Yes.
that Jan had, not the T hangars.
Right. He's already assigned the other half of it,
Gotcha.
which was his goal, I think, from the beginning, was to build it and then
Sell it.
sell it.
Gotcha. I don't see a problem with that. Any questions?
Well, I was just going to make the motion to approve the assignment of the lease to the new owner.
Have a second? Any discussion? Notice of,
Who would be the new, who would be the new leaseholder?
It's Lauren Smith.
Lauren Smith. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, no further questions or comments. Let's vote. All in favor of allowing the assignment of the private hangar ground lease to go forward as discussed, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? With no nays, the Electric City Aero lease agreement assignment is approved.
Thank you.
All right, number 2, terminal refresh project, terminal seating.
Yes, we're continuing to march down the road, getting some terminal work done to clean things up. And the next thing on our sites is to get rid of some of the lobby furniture. We've got the blue and the green chairs out there in the lobby. Some of them are down on the baggage claim level, some of them are up on the second floor, and then there's a few out in front of the restaurant. The green fabric in particular, that solid green, is heavily stained. We've tried cleaning them in the past with mixed results. Those chairs are really in pretty bad condition. You know, some of the wood's is marred up a little bit. And a lot of the end tables are starting to break on the ends of that furniture. Our goal with this project would be to replace all the green at a minimum, consolidate the blues into one or two of the remaining seating areas. So we put all new furniture in the bag claim. We put largely new furniture in the lobby area in front of the offices. We take the remaining blues that are in good condition, consolidate them in front of Delton, Alaska, until that children's play area goes in place. And we might leave a few additional seats out in front of the restaurant too, the blue. There's some green over there right now that we get rid of. We've got some pricing. We think we can get all that accomplished for about $38,000. The new seating that we plan to purchase would have a vinyl seat similar to what we have in the hold rooms. It's going to be easier to clean. It won't show staining like the current stuff. That vinyl, it's rated for, I think, 200,000 uses. So it's a heavy commercial grade vinyl. We'll be using metal framing this time around, so as people hit it with their bags and stuff, it doesn't scratch up quite as easily. The backs of the chairs, we would retain some fabric so we can have some color in there. We'd like to bring to the board a request for $38,000 as part of the terminal refresh project to acquire some new lobby furniture for the terminal building.
Has there been any
We do discussion before we make the motion. Or is that-
It doesn't really matter, you do both.
The two things that I see sitting in airports all the time is when you have them with the common elbow rest, you can only have one person every other chair.
Yep.
Number one. And then number two, if we're going to upgrade, especially in the secure side of it, everybody's always looking for a plug-in. And if you have a plug-in built into the underneath the seats like every other one, those are getting used all the time. Otherwise, people are sitting on the floor next to the plug-ins that are on the columns to charge their iPhone. So with that seating, and I don't know it's a huge issue outside prior to security, because most people aren't sitting around out there other than waiting for people to show up.
You really,
Inside.
yeah, you really don't see it so much outside security. We'll get a few people to camp out over near the columns if they're stuck overnight. You know, they'll go over there, and there are some plugs. Most of the furniture we'd be acquiring for the lobby area does have an armrest. I did leave in there, I think, somewhere around 8 or 9 units near where we have the ones without armrests now, because invariably once a week or so we'll get somebody stranded overnight, and you know, some airports don't want them laying down. I guess I don't care as much, you know, they're just gonna lay on the floor if they don't lay on the furniture. You know, so I left a few units over there that don't have arms, so that 3 couch seats so that they can lay down. The vinyl will hold up to that just fine, if they drool on it or whatever. But you know, my thought is, yes, we want the arms. None of this furniture will be long-term in the secure area. So I don't have anything in there with the power units. The power units are exceptionally expensive. I did a bunch of them in Colorado Springs. It adds a lot of money. And the other problem you have is those whips on the terminal, on the seating, get destroyed by the cleaning guys trying to move them, because they're constantly trying to get under there with the vacuum. If you don't have anything plugged into them, you know, they'll move the seats and vacuum. You know, if they're constantly pulling on the cord trying to get it out of the floor socket, they're going to tear them up. In addition, every time you go through there, the seats get moved around a little bit. You know, when you remodel everything else, the floor cores, what do you pay the core rod here to put in a new outlet?
Oh, I don't know, maybe a couple $100. but-
Really, that's a good deal. I was gonna say, in Colorado Springs, I think every new outlet I put in was $6,000. You know, just to get the floor cord, because we'd have to survey it first. We always hit utilities and everything else. And, you know, and so, you know, they're really expensive to do. And so in the hold rooms that we remodeled in the last go-around, including the 2 across from the children's play area where the blue seats will be consolidated, we did those power counters where there's like 13 outlets along with those stools. And eventually we want to get that same model down to Alaska and United, so that there's a power counter where everybody can plug in their devices and sit at that counter, or just plug their device in and go sit in the more comfortable seating. So in the lobby area, I mean, my recommendation would be not to core that floor a bunch of times. We're going to remodel that lobby area eventually anyway. You know, there's not really as much demand over there for the power outlets. We do have a few outlets over there, and there is one family of seating that will have an outlet around it. And Rod and I were talking about trying to get some type of power, like basically just a power strip that we would mount to the bottom of the table so that people could plug multiple things into it. But we can do that more or less in-house.
Okay. And then the other part of that with the transition from 50 seat RJs to 76 seat RJs, which is happening even as we speak. Discussion of getting more seats available for the hold rooms.
So when we did the Delta United combination into that massive hold room, you know, we increased the size of both of those, and we have a common seating area. And so they have fit an Airbus in there at the same time as a 76 seat jet. And we run a little low on seating, and so we've added some benches down those hallways. We've been buying those heavy gauge metal benches for along the wall because they'll last forever. And so we'll probably add some more benches along through there. Allegiant's already at their terminal aircraft down that way, and they're 188 seats. They're boarding down this way, so that was sized for it. And then down at the United gate over there, when we could buy some more seating for that one. the Chicago flight fills that one up. Again, that's the secure side seating, which is the Arcanus product that we've got everywhere else. The two end hold rooms, we have some wood stuff we consolidated down with Legion, which is really, really tough stuff. That stuff's in really good shape and probably will last us for quite a while. It's packed down there. We can't fit any more seats in down there. Down at this end, we bought some stuff from Salt Lake City, I think, wasn't it, Laura?
Yes.
Yeah, we bought some used furniture from Salt Lake City, got a really good deal on it. We could get more seats in there, but to do one of those hold rooms, each one of those seating units is about $2,000 a piece for that Arcanus stuff. So we'd probably be looking at 38 or 40 just in that hold room to get more seating in there. Eventually, we'll do that. But this project isn't that. This is lobby seating. It's not the hold room. That stuff's in pretty good shape, and that hold room has been holding up really well to the regional jet that we got to Chicago right now.
All right, can I get a motion to accept the capital project terminal lobby furniture replacement as stated? You can move it.
Oh, I will be happy to.
All right. Any seconds? Any further discussion?
Is this a repair type expense rather than a capital?
No, it's a full replacement. We looked at reupholstering what we have out there, but it's.
But just from a category of in our expense in our budget?
It's capitalized.
We're going to capitalize it. The last stuff was purchased in 08, and we've got a 10-year life out of it. So.
Okay.
It was 08, right, Rod?
03, when that furniture was done.
Definitely got a license.
Yeah, 15 years.
Yeah, I think it said 08 in the.
Yeah, it does say 08.
Yeah, it's the first terminal remodel in 2003.
Yeah, got a good life out of those chairs.
Good question. Any other discussion? All right, no further discussion. Let's call for a vote on the capital project terminal lobby furniture replacement. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. We are so moved. The capital project terminal lobby furniture replacement is approved. And number 3, the Love's annexation and development agreement.
Yes, as you may recall, we completed a lease with Love's. It's been a year and a half ago?
I know.
Some time ago. They're in the process of getting through permitting. They actually have a permit hearing, I believe, on September 3rd. We're getting closer and closer to seeing that project come to fruition. As part of that project, they're not only leasing our land, they're acquiring a couple acres from the neighbor of theirs, the Swanson family, to combine into this property. And so they are, in addition to having to lease our property, they're having to annex some of that property into the city, which is currently county. So the city has been interested in trying to get an annexation agreement. There were some loose ends with us that we needed to get figured out in that process, and so the city wanted us to sign the annexation agreement. None of our other developments have ever required an annexation or a development agreement. iState, Eagle Jet, all those were done without a development agreement. But because this one ropes in some of that county property, the city wanted us to be a party to the annexation agreement. And so it was sort of a freeway negotiation between everyone to get this agreement figured out. The only sort of enduring issue that remains with us is, as part of this, the city wants to retain the existing access point to the 911 building. And we're going to be building a brand new road next to that entrance, immediately next to it, that'll go into the 911 center. And that'll be the primary new entrance. And so when we had done the lease with Love's back in those times, we had talked to the city about that and told them we'd like to consolidate those entry points. Eventually, we want to redo the entry road, and so we're trying to eliminate as many access points as possible on that road to make flow better, particularly now that we'll have a big development there that'll be generating more traffic on the corner. But the city wants to retain this for emergency vehicles, so their plan would be to put a gate across it. Then you'd have a punch gate that you can go through if they want to come out of there. Let's say the Loves, the entrance from Loves into their area is blocked. They could come this back way through the gate and get out that way.
Do you have a picture? Can we look at, can you show us the picture?
Yeah, sure. That's a good idea. So this is the existing entrance to the 911 center. When you go out there today, we'll be building a brand new road along this fence line when you drive by. It's kind of a little snow fence, more or less, that sits there. There'll be a brand new road here that ties into the existing parking lot of the 911 center. The city, at the time we got this development agreement, added the requirement in that they want to retain that access point so that they can have it for an emergency gate. Our major concern with that is just that when we remove this road, in a couple years we're going to expand that road, and the goal would be to add another outbound lane along with a high-speed exit for the guys coming out of Mang. Because today they merge right into a drive lane, and then the drive lane immediately consolidates down. So you go from 2 drive lanes here to 1 drive lane with them merging in. Eventually we want to add 2 lanes so that they have their own merge lane to get them up to speed. And then we have 2 exit lanes just like we have 2 entry lanes today. So that road width is going to have to eventually come out of this side, because this side over here is chock full of utilities and even a building down here on the Mang side that would get in the way of that. So we're going to have to go this way. So to keep this access point, we'll have to relocate the culvert and the approach. So it's going to cost us, I guess, maybe 20, 30 grand if we have to do all that work to retain it. But the city wants to have that so they have a secondary exit out of there in case the new entrance gets plugged somehow and they can't get out. And so everything else in this agreement pertains to Loves for the most part. The city also wants a berm that'll go basically the entire length of that roadway to protect them from being rammed by somebody in the Loves parking lot. And Loves will be constructing that. Loves has also said they'll donate the gate to put across that roadway, so we won't have any immediate expense. The expense will just be, I think this project's planned for 3 years out when we widen the road. Once Loves is done cutting all their utilities across and doing whatever their approaches that'll go into the development, it'll be time to mill and overlay that because it'll be all cut up anyhow. So the idea would be to expand that road in about 3 years or so to get that new capacity in there. And at that point, we'd pick up that approach and move it.
And how much of the county land, and where's the whole Loves development going to go?
So the Loves development, this is our land more or less right here. On this side of this is the old highway right-of-way. That's so old, it's probably ye old. But this is the land that we'll give to this, and then they've purchased back into here, into the Swanson land. So they'll have a piece of it from the county coming into the lot here. And then Loves has gone ahead and bought this piece of right-of-way because there was a bad lot line on this corner where it jogged. And so as part of that annexation, they wanted to clean up that corner. I think the county wanted that so that it's a squared off corner. It kind of had a funny dog leg in it. And so the Loves went ahead and bought this piece that we were going to buy. And then Daryl Swanson was here. Is that just last week? It seems like eons ago. Daryl was here last week, and we met with him on eventually trying to close Airport Avenue B. And then we would acquire this piece from Loves to build that road and eventually maybe close this and then consolidate all this traffic onto the new road here, new Airport Avenue B. And then this could be abandoned. And so we talked about that again. He would love to keep both open, just because it's more access to his property, which makes sense. But we've talked about it a number of times. The biggest problem with that is it's going to be right across from this expanded Mang. It already is, across from this Mang access at a funny angle. And so when you consolidate in all these lefts in and lefts out, it makes for a bad intersection. And on top of that, if this ever gets developed, I think somebody's planning to develop it now. But as that gets developed, that traffic coming out into that Mang intersection is going to be problematic. So eventually we'd love to close that and consolidate everything here. But that's not part of this development agreement. That'll be done if it's done further down the road.
So John, is the track 2 that's referred to in the agreement, did Loves actually purchase that then? Is that the Swanson or the little weird piece?
I'm not sure which one track 2 is. Do you know, Laura?
Is there a
It's in
difference
section
between the
2.
Swanson and the Little League?
Swanson owns them both. So they own this piece here, and then now they own this piece here.
Because it said that section 2 needed to be, or track 2 needed to be purchased by July. Should we?
Yeah, and Swanson has completed both transactions.
Oh, okay.
In fact, the city had asked for copies of the deed. That seems like that was a month ago or more. And Love's had provided all that some time ago. So, yeah, in fact, when Daryl was here, we were talking about it. They have acquired everything now.
Okay.
Yeah, so both of those came from Swanson.
And obviously, Airport Avenue B would only be a conflict if Maine keeps their current entry/exit. Have they committed or talked about anything about moving their main gate all the way down onto the highway?
Not their main gate, but they do like the idea that we presented to them of having another gate at I-State. If you remember, well, many of you probably weren't here, but when we did the I-State deal, on the backside of I-State, there's the ability to push the road all the way to the Mang gate. And we showed that in the master plan as a potential entrance into Mang. And some time ago, we brought it up in a meeting with the planners at Mang, and they took it back to Command. And Command actually likes that approach, I think more as a secondary access point.
And the fuel farm,
Yeah.
relocation.
So they are kicking that around as an option. The other problem with keeping Airport Avenue B, which we've talked about at length in the past, is everything from B back to the interstate in one lane on both sides, both in and out, becomes ineligible for us because there's a private access here that keeps it from being exclusively airport traffic. And the FAA 5 years ago, adopted the stance that it has to be exclusive airport access to use airport dollars for. That's new. In fact, at the time, the lady that was in charge of the Seattle region, I used to work with at SeaTac, and I reminded her of projects we did at SeaTac, which we used federal dollars for that were not exclusively airport use. And I also mentioned a number of PFC applications that I'd done as a consultant throughout the years at airports all over in every region, which didn't follow that guidance. And in fact, there's even some here in Montana where they've used airport dollars and it's not exclusive access. So that's a relatively recent interpretation is what the FAA would say. It's an interpretation, not a new rule. But when they rewrote the handbook a few years ago, they beefed up the language and now their interpretation is it has to be exclusively airport. And so in the next 2 years, as we figure out what's going to happen with Airport Avenue B, that's yet another thing we have to get resolved, is we've got to get either this moved so that we can make this intersection eligible, which would be better, because if we've got to make a lot of improvements in here, that's probably a $500,000 intersection, be my guess, to get everything done we need to do. If we can use federal dollars for that, it's much, much better. And then if we have to try to find a way to get the airlines to pay for $500,000, which won't be popular, on the entry road, because it doesn't impact them directly. The airport traffic flows now. It's just this other traffic of Mang and the other things that we're trying to consolidate. And so there's a lot of moving parts on that piece of it, which again isn't really part of this development agreement. It's just a future related element that we have to deal with eventually.
And has Love said that they're going to pay for the road expansion from the freeway on-ramp all the way to the ECC Center, or whatever you call that, to make that third lane over that's exclusively a turn-in lane to the...
Yeah, they'll be building all of the approaches, which more or less ends up with the majority of the third lane, because all of them are right in and protected slow-down lanes. So as they develop their site, they'll be adding to the road all those bays. I think there's 3, isn't there, Rod? So there's 3 bays in to get to get all of those bays done. And then the new entry road, which I'm just calling the new Airport Avenue B, just because that's the function it has. The new entry road here is a combination of $100,000 from the city, which was the rent for the 911 center. We prorated the rent for 40 years for that parcel. And so that's $100,000 that is coming from the city to us. And then Love's will pay the entire cost of it, and we'll reimburse them that $104,000. So more or less, Love's is paying the whole cost. The city is contributing $104,000. and through us as the intermediary to get that new road built.
So, I know I ask this every meeting, but Nick has reviewed it.
Yeah, Mick's reviewed it, and I think Loves has actually already signed this. In fact, before the meeting, I sent an email to everyone and said,
Oh.
is anyone sending it to us, because we need to sign it also, so. I don't know where the original is. You have it? Oh.
Yeah, I think we've got it. I think
No
it's
one told
actually,
me.
We're ready to sign it.
Okay.
As
it's
soon as-
on the bottom of this one.
Are you
It's got
sure
two
that's the
signatures.
original, not just the email copy? I think that's the email copy.
I think they sent it to us.
Okay.
Maybe not.
Maybe we do have the original.
No, my only question still is, the basic question is, why are we on this as a signatory? It's between the city and Loves. I mean, is there anything in here that says that if Loves defaults or whatever, we're liable to pay for road improvements or whatever that they're not doing, and then we get stuck with a bill that we can't legally pay?
So, no, when we initially presented this, I think it was in May, was it in
Yeah.
June? When we were initially presented this in May or June, we had just received it, and so we were still working on it. But initially what happened when the city drafted it was it had us and Loves combined as owners. And throughout the entire document, it just said owners, 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 owners. And so, when our feedback to the city was, we won't do any of the things that Loves is responsible for. I mean, for instance, having things that are like, you have to complete the water line. Well, if Loves pulled out, we of course wouldn't want the water line. So we didn't want to do that. There were other financial commitments in there. Someone had to provide insurance. Well, obviously, vehicle insurance, and we're not going to provide vehicle insurance for the construction of a building in joint with them. So our initial feedback to Mick was, we don't understand why we have to be party to this. In fact, we don't want to be party to this. And so as the negotiations went on, the city insisted that we be party to it. And that was right before, it was July, wasn't it? So right about July, the city came back and said, this will be delayed if you can't execute, the agreement. And so at the time we said, okay, well, our intent would be to execute it because we don't want to delay it anymore. And so, in our initial meetings with the city, we had told them, this is an agreement for development. The airport doesn't want to have any burden at all from this agreement, and that's what we told planning. Because otherwise we're cutting our own risks, right? I mean, we've already got our lease negotiated. We're not getting more money, so we don't want any more burden out of this. Whatever you and Loves agree to is what you and Loves agree to for development, right? And so that was our guidance throughout. And the one thing that kind of got stuck to us was the language in there that says that we will maintain the access at the 911, which on the surface we can do. Right? I mean, we don't have to close that road, but as I pointed out to the city back in July, when the road expands, that access point will have to be modified. We can't, you can't maintain it as it is today at all. That's not possible because it'll change, right? And so it took us a while to get on the same page of what that language meant. We can't, if you change something, it can't stay the way it is. And so they agreed that was the case, but they also said you have to maintain it throughout that expansion. And so, we end up with the bill to continue to have that secondary access. So that was the one thing that we got kind of tagged with in this agreement that we will have to retain is the responsibility when we build that road. And we tried a couple other suggestions. We said, hey, look, the Loves parking lot has 4 different exits out of it, and it's a massive parcel of 7 or 8 basically paved acres. Why don't we just build an access road and a punch gate on the back of your gate? Because behind their building is a fence, basically in line with the building that goes to the back, and there's an old FAA access right there. And we said, hey, why don't we just build a punch gate on the back of your gate such that you punch through the back of your parking lot, and now you're into 6 paved acres. I mean, almost no one can block 6 paved acres, right? There's 3 access points out. And I mean, it would be easy enough, and they're not moving the fence when we do this project. So the way it works is you'll be able to drive past the berm that Loves is building and drive right up to the gate. You could actually drive into the building if you wanted because they're not moving the gate out to marry the berm. And so we had some confusion around that, because I assumed they would move the gate to the berm, so that you can't get into the building. So the way the way they're planning on it working is they're going to leave the fence where it is, so you'll drive past the berm, you can access the building, and then you can actually access the back of this punch gate. So we had argued that the punch gate really didn't provide any purpose, because 2 cars could easily block both access points, where you need a bunch more cars to block the Love's access through the parking lot. But we weren't successful, and ultimately Love's really wanted to get this on the permit hearing when we did, and so we just said, okay, we'll come to the board with what we have, recommend it, and try to get the development agreement done in time for the September 3rd meeting, which obviously is next month.
Right. The only thing when I was reading it, because I remember we talked about that, maintaining the current access, is the very last 2 sentences of that section 12 about the center. All parties, it's understood by all parties that the airport tends to expand that airport road. The airport agrees that it will, to the maximum extent feasible, whatever that means, design its expansion to maintain the emergency-only access point where it currently exists. You've just said it's not possible, so.
Well, I think what he's trying to say is that the point is going to be saying, but the culvert ditch there is going to start moving, and that ditch is going to get closer and closer.
So
to
the
fence.
language that was there prior
Right.
to this amendment said that we would maintain the current access point, which you can't do, because the road's expanding, right? I mean,
Right.
it's like
Right.
saying, we're going to maintain every road the way it is right now. Well, you can't. You have to overlay them. You have to, you have to do things to them. And so, we argued to the city that, well, we can't maintain the current access point. The road's getting wider, right? So, can we said, can we just maintain access? I mean, what if we give it to you in a different location? What if we punch to the back of the back of the gate and come in a different way? And so the language they offered was this to the maximum extent feasible, which gives us some wiggle room if there's some reason that intersection doesn't work. I mean, my hope is this is kind of a punt to maybe 2 or 3 years from now. When we get to that point, they might say, well, we could do this or we could do that maybe to accommodate that access point. And we would all agree that something else accommodates it. Because, like I said, I mean, if you really think of the function of this, I mean, it's a second access point out, but it can easily be blocked, by coming in a new entry point and just parking over there. So, we'll see at the time, what makes sense. But we did get this changed some. So what it said, with the where the access currently exists, is kind of where is what it says now. So in the vicinity of the current access point, we've got a commitment to try and make that work. If it doesn't work, then there's a little bit of wiggle room in there to try and figure something else out.
Okay.
So you're comfortable with this 4th sentence in on the main paragraph, right after where it says the development? Still, it says the airport authority and Love's are collectively referred to as the owners. That did not go away.
Where it went away is when it talks about doing things.
After that, I didn't see anything
Yeah.
about us except for that punch gate issue.
Yeah.
But right in that first paragraph, it says we are part of the owners.
Right. And so what we had Mick do is to go in and take out the individual the dual requirements and replace them with individual requirements. And so, like when you go down to paragraph, 2.3, instead of saying owner's obligations under the agreement are subject to Love's, or to owner's acquisition, it's specific to Love's. And then in the one case where we have a requirement, it's specific to us, which is the roadway requirement. And so, the owners, what we've basically done is try to divide up the responsibilities into specific responsibilities to individuals rather than to the owners. Everything prior was just owners.
Right.
We're not in a commercial transaction with Love's. We're just the land lease.
And are we leasing? Yeah, we are leasing the land to them because they can't purchase its airport property.
Right. We can't.
But they are purchasing the county piece on the backside.
Swanson's property is purchased and
All right. Okay, that makes more sense.
So in some cases, like where it talks about street assessments, Love's will be paying street assessments to the city, but in the prior draft, you may remember it said that owners will pay street assessments and give up our right to protest. Well, we can't do that.
Right.
You know, we just went through a couple years of that with the FAA. And so, you know, we separated that language such that now Love's has a requirement to pay street assessments and to not protest their building or their, you know, the city's right to collect street assessments.
So
That makes
in
sense.
summary then, you're comfortable this is something we could live with?
Yes, I think, you know, like I said, you know, we'll have some cost in there to change and move that approach. I mean, it's probably gonna lose us a year of revenue, you know, to change that approach somewhere down the road, in order to keep that secondary access point for the 911 center. But, you know, it is what it is. I mean, you know, we need to get Love's down the road here. They're feeling a little delayed. And obviously there won't be any construction accomplished again this summer. So, you know, we need to get them down the road, and, you know, this gets us a month. It's possible they might even be able to get some work done this summer, or, you know, or this fall. I doubt it. I think we just heard from them, they're probably not gonna do anything until spring. But at least, you know, we're doing our best to process this and get it moving.
And unrelated to that, then, I can't recall with their lease, we deferred their payments, didn't we?
We deferred them until the end of last fiscal year. So, Laura, when did they start in March?
No, yeah, but July 1 is what they.
Yeah, so
Yeah, they have started.
we told them we would delay their payments. I think they were supposed to start in March, though, right?
Right.
So the
I think they
airport
were.
lost, you know, March until June, that because of the permitting delay. We did, you know, give them relief from those months of rent payment, which I thought was fair, but we told them we need to hold the line at this fiscal year. It's already in the approved budget, and, you know, we need to hold the line. And Love's understood that, and they agreed to go ahead under that. And they've been paying now for a month, so,
Okay.
you know, we are getting some rent out of that parcel already.
Good. Thoughts, anybody else?
Just curious if they announced the food partner, food franchise yet?
Is that public? I heard some rumors.
Well, you had mentioned the rumor a while back, and I would, has it changed?
Which rumor have we talked about?
Is it pancakes or not?
Oh, I wasn't. It's not pancakes.
I haven't even heard the rumor, I must be really out of it.
Somewhere I heard it.
Yeah, no, they have a food partner, and I think it's actually a pretty good choice. You know, the folks from the Guard will be able to walk over there at, you know, during Guard weekend and stuff, and I think it'll be pretty popular. It's a good one, and it's a one they typically have.
Okay,
So,
just curious.
or they often have, I should say. If you look around, they only have 4 or 5 they typically do.
Excellent. All right, can I have a motion to accept the annexation and development agreement between the City of Great Falls, the Great Falls International Airport Authority, and Love's Truck Stops to go ahead as stated in this agreement that we have? Did I get that right?
I'll
Or you want to
propose
restate?
the motion as stated by the chair.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Excellent. With no further discussion, let's call for a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. The motion for the annexation development agreement between Great Falls, the International Airport, and Love's is approved. Thank you. Excellent. Good discussion, thanks. Okay, let's finish off. Airport Authority Board comments. Commissioner Harris, none of the comments. Commissioner Kimbo. Commissioner Evans. I have no further comments. Any comments from the public? JC.
I'll get over here so you can see me easily.
T-shirt.
For those of you that don't know who I am, I'm J.C. Kontrovitz, 166 Swift Road, Great Falls. I spent 7 years as a commissioner on the Airport Authority. And to give you a little more history of myself, I spent my entire life in agriculture, and I've been interested in aviation since I was very young. I'm a private pilot. I was deeply involved with all the alphabet organizations and in some leadership roles in those organizations. And I'm not sure if I'm a sounding board or a whipping post. But I seem to be the one that everybody comes to with all their ideas and all their complaints. So I have 3 things I'd like to bring up. Number 1, and to give you a little bit of history behind this airport administration rule. Many years ago, when all of the big construction was happening and the main runway was rebuilt and the Alpha taxiway was rebuilt, an administration rule was instituted that there can be no 180-degree turns on the runway. And it was quite logical because the air carriers are really heavy and they would do a significant amount of damage making U-turn on the runway. But of course, like all government rules, one size does not fit all. Because all aircraft that use this airport don't weigh 250,000 pounds. The rule also applies to airplanes that only weigh 800 pounds, 1,200 pounds. Case of mine, if it was at gross weight, 2,000 pounds. And this creates a real problem because Sunday we had a significant weather event. We had extremely high winds and it was a real bad situation. There was a Cessna 185, which is conventional gear underneath it, chose to land on runway 35. Well, under the present administration rules, he would add a taxi a mile to the end of 35, turn around, taxi with a quartering tailwind for a mile back to try and get anywhere. And with a great deal of wisdom, the air traffic controller on duty at that time suggested, just turn around and taxi back. And it probably saved a bunch of crumpled metal. And this is not the first time this has happened. This has happened a lot. It even happened to me one time. I don't have any depth perception anymore, which is real interesting sometimes. I flew in here one time and telling him to turn off on Alpha 6, missed him by 50 feet. We're driving airplanes. We're not driving cars or pickups, and they're not made to run around on the ground, and particularly mine. With the big tires I have on it, I only have 8 PSI ground pressure. And having gone 50 feet too far, I was advised that you cannot turn around and come back. So what I would really encourage you to do is to take a look at your rule. And I'm not sure where a breaking point could be. I know there's a 12,500 pound breaking point on some aircraft. Maybe a materials engineer could help you with this. I certainly am not a materials engineer. To know where it would be safe for what aircraft weight to be able to do a U-turn on the taxiway and come back. Second thing that has come to mind is this summer, and I don't know if it was just this summer's rule, administrative rule again, but no touch and go operations were allowed while the maintenance personnel were working on the runway. And that makes perfect sense because they can't be getting out of the way every 5 minutes or so for aircrafts landing and taking off continuously. But the problem is that maintenance personnel don't work on the runway all day long. They're out there for maybe a couple hours and then they're finished and back to doing something else. However, when the rule is imposed, it's for all day. So there are no touch and go operations all day because we have maintenance out there, but there's no maintenance. This has been severely impacting flight training operations, both economically and educationally, because these kids trying to learn how to fly actually do need to make multiple takeoffs and landings. I don't know about Vince, and I'm certain I don't have the hours he has. But this morning I did 3 practice touch and goes on my strip, just because I need to practice. And I've got quite a bit of practice. So if you could please take a look at that administrative rule. And when the guys are done with maintenance, all they have to do is get on the radio, call the tower and say you can open up the airport for touch and go operations again. It'd be quite simple. Now the third one. I was approached about a month ago. I keep wanting to call them stewardesses. They're flight attendants. Stewardess really insults them. I know a number of flight attendants, and there are some airline pilots here too, that live in the community. And they approached me with an idea for your discussion today of the SCASD funds, always trying to bring in new airlines into the community. And I think here sometime back there was talk about Frontier coming in as a new airline, wasn't there?
Yeah, they're back in the market again. That's
Yeah.
a possibility.
Yeah. And at 2 a.m., and I'm serious, I got up and I flipped on the light, and I dug through my t-shirt drawer, and I found this. Great Falls International Airport, Frontier Airlines, May 14th, 2012. They've been here before many times, and as soon as the money runs out, they're gone like a thief in the night. So anyway, the idea presented to me by the flight attendants was this. Instead of using this money and always chasing new airlines to come in, we have a number of big hubs now, and we have a good selection of airlines serving us. Why not use the money to buy seats? So instead of running a small regional jet, induce the airline with payment to increase the number of seats. And by paying for the seats, you're encouraging the airlines to send in bigger equipment. You're encouraging the people to do more flying, because more seats generally lead to lower ticket prices, and it's certainly much more economical for the airlines to fly bigger aircraft than smaller ones. So anyway, that's my speech for today. It's all you get.
Thank you. I have not, just to answer your questions with what I know versus, and we'll see what John knows versus doesn't know. The 180 turns, question on the runway, is that's driven by us, not by the FAA for wear and tear on the runway?
It is. One of the problems, and Rod, jump in here, one of the problems we've got is that the tower doesn't readily know which planes to turn and not turn. Anything we put in place through a letter of agreement, the tower has to agree to that also, and whether or not they'll actually administer it. And that's one of the problems we've had in the past is when we've said, well, light aircraft is, the easiest way to do it with the tower, because again, they don't know the weight of most of those planes, would be to say light aircraft, yes, anything other than a light aircraft, no, and then you've got to get into some definition of what they're going to call a light aircraft and not a light aircraft. It's not always all that predictable as to which airplanes are tough on the front gear. Like the King Air, for example, even though some people would say it's a light airplane, the front gear is fairly heavy for a King Air. So, I mean, that's one of the issues we've had. Rod, I don't know if you have any thoughts.
Yeah, it's just, we've worked with the tower, trying to determine what aircraft should do it. It just progresses into more and more aircraft. You see, I can show you marks from the C-130s where they turn around, but, you know, trying to find a definitive way of
Well, I think that,
I think your
The airport
12,000, man,
tower
12,500 pounds is a perfect determinant.
and I think,
If you have a
you know,
tank
that
rating, it's probably too big.
we've tried that, but then, you know,
It's not administered
Yeah.
consistently
Right,
by the
yeah.
tower. You know, they,
and then lock wheel turns, I mean, even a light aircraft on a hot day when he just locks one wheel and spins around, you know, instead of making a gradual turn, you know, that damages the asphalt out there.
I don't know about the
almost
asphalt, but
as
it
much as
definitely
a
damages
pickup
the
doing the
tire.
same thing.
Yeah. What's that?
Almost as much as a pickup doing the same thing.
Well, the pickup doesn't quite lock the wheel though.
Well, I think that there is quite an education program going on at air traffic control facilities now. And I think that the controllers will all be properly schooled as to identification of aircraft and relative weights. They must do it now because the landing distance and the 3-minute rule behind the heavies, and there can't be any takeoffs or landings for 3 minutes.
That's for weight turbulence, yeah.
Right, for weight turbulence. Well, they have to recognize the size of the aircraft there. I did hear a cute story. There was a brand new trainee that showed up and he had a mall coming in. And a mall is a brand name type manufacturer of aircraft. So the trainee quite innocently asked, "What's a mall?" And the reply was, "It's a large building with a lot of different stores inside around a central hallway."
All right.
So they're learning.
Yeah. And on the, as to the second question, the no touch and goes, I had to work with that all summer. The NOTAM specifically says from 8:15 to 9 a.m. So unless the tower guys are not paying attention, or you guys have to extend it and don't cancel it.
There is the
for
daily one from, I think it is 8:45 to
8:15 to 9 a.m.
yeah, and that's for the daily field inspection. And we
That's
work
a
that
fog
through the
check.
tower because our daily inspections through FAA rules are getting more and more complex. So it takes longer to do a really thorough inspection like you should, not just drive down the runway. We've got some new people. They're very good. They pay attention to what they're doing out there, following the rules, and it does take longer these days than it used to. So working with the tower, we agreed the best solution was to just do the no touch and go, so maintenance could be done, everybody can get back to doing their things. The other ones that might last all day would be if we're mowing in the safety areas of the runway. And that's another thing, just let's get in there, get it done. I mean, we could mow it in a day without, you know, very many interruptions. If we have constant touch and goes, then it's just.
John and I have had this discussion, and if there's a way to do that inspection later in the day, because the best wind to fly in with students happens from sunrise until about 9 a.m.
Mhm.
And then the winds pick up, and now you got to deal with crosswinds and gusty winds. So it can be after 10 o'clock, that makes a huge difference on our ability to get good training for brand new students.
And I think that's possible, but one of the reasons we do it at that time of day, you know, Rod and I were out there just yesterday on the runway looking at the fog seal, and they were water blasting some paint off, and they kicked up quite a few rocks water blasting. You know, so we like to get out there early in the day. You know, once the commercial guys are gone, you know, that last Alaska flight, I mean, we pretty much have departures from before sunrise until 8.
Yep.
And then we try to get out there right away because, you know, the heavier planes tend to, you know, tire debris, the other crap that's going to blow off the planes, bolts and stuff they don't miss. I mean, you know, that's when stuff comes off the plane, is when those guys are flying. The little guys, generally, if they lose a bolt, they're going to know it fast, you know, or something like that. And then on top of that, we try to get out there and get the rocks out and stuff. I mean, we probably could adjust that some. But Rod and I went out there yesterday and in the morning, and we picked up, handfuls of rocks from that water blast, and then.
And that's just during the construction part. I mean, on a
It is, but
normal
I
day.
mean, that's why we do it. At first opportunity we can after those commercial flights is to try and get the field clean that time of day. And, which lights got knocked over and that kind of thing. That's kind of why we do it that time of day.
We're required to do it daytime and nighttime.
Okay.
The nighttime we do, or our guys do, or security people do, around
You
4:30.
you anticipate you'll have that 45-minute gap after the construction season's over, when you get into September, October, late September, early October?
Say that again, please.
That you'll have that NOTAM in for no touch and goes this fall in October?
Oh,
and
yeah.
beyond?
Yeah, I think it's permanent.
But
But we could adjust it.
I mean, could we do it at 9:30 or something like that? I mean, it may be possible. I mean, the
10 o'clock,
trade-off
or maybe
is we're missing stuff we should probably find.
Well, in the wintertime, later is better for us. So
Yeah.
that's the problem, is in the summertime, we fly early in the wind, before the wind. In the wintertime, we fly late because the sun doesn't come up.
Don't come out until, yeah.
We don't start
Well,
taking off until 10. Yeah,
We
I
can
got you.
look at adjusting those times,
Okay.
because we do need just a daytime and a nighttime, but,
And then the last one on buying seats.
I can talk to that a little bit. So, a couple thoughts. I mean, why Frontier? I'll start there just because that was your first comment. So Frontier's been bought and sold a number of times. It's a completely different airline now. Much the same way, United and Continental aren't the same airlines they were 20 years ago either. Continental's gone, and most of the management team of Continental survived that merger, and most of the United team went away, even though it's now called United. But, Frontier, in the same capacity, has had 3 or 4 ownership changes, and it's so, as some of you may know, particularly if you've worked for an airline, to start a brand new airline with all the route flying you have to do pro bono ahead of time and everything else, it's incredibly cost prohibitive. You have to go out and run the routes for a certain period of time before you can take passenger one. And so, much like what Boeing's been trying to do with the 737 line, where they keep inventing new planes and call them the 737 hyphen something else. The same is true with airlines, is when a management group wants to own an airline, rather than upstarting it and start all of that process all over again, they buy an existing carrier. It's easier. Someone even bought Pan Am's certificate a number of years back and ran out of peace up in the Northeast because it was an active certificate.
And Eastern is back flying out of Florida now.
No doubt. I mean, you have these ghost airlines where it's easier to buy an operating plan that the FAA has already certified. Same is true with Frontier. It's passed through a couple ownership changes over the years, and they did leave Great Falls. They left Great Falls and Billings. They stayed in Bozeman and Missoula throughout that period. Part of the reason they consolidated some of their routes was because in that last round of consolidation of airlines, there were a number of hubs back east that were abandoned. Cincinnati was one, used to be a Delta hub. Cleveland, for example, used to be a Continental hub. Pittsburgh was U.S. Airways. So a number of gates opened up in these large communities, and Frontier seized the opportunity to move into large communities and fly people to vacation destinations in Florida, even some Las Vegas service now. So what they did is they took some of the Denver capacity they had on their hub runs, and they moved it to take advantage of the large markets back east. If you look at the origins of Southwest Airlines, it's not all that dissimilar. They had a great network in Texas that they ran for a long time as a regional airline. And then they started running, as the planes got bigger, they began running things into Texas, but they were still a regional airline for a long time. When they went to a major national airline, they did that by going into a bunch of markets and flying to Florida. That's how they expanded into a major national. So like, for instance, Albany, New York, went from one day having 1 million enplanements, 1.3 million enplanements per year. In the next year, they jumped all the way to 2.9 because Southwest moved in with 9 Florida flights a day. And so that is the way that many of these carriers go from being little guy doing a regional carrier to, hey, now I'm a major national connecting markets. And you're seeing that there's really not, I mean, if you look at the broader market, there's not much hope for a new airline to come out of nowhere and start service as a major national. It just can't happen that way. They've got to grow into it. And so Frontier is well down the path of being the next major national, more so than you know, a Moxie or one of these upstarts like, what was the one that started out of North Carolina, they only lasted a few weeks. Newport News, it was People's Express, which used to be an East Coast airline. They only lasted a couple of years. So most of the upstart airlines that have tried to start in the last 15 years have failed almost immediately. Skybus, a couple of other ones. The only opportunities in the industry right now are these smaller niche carriers. Spirit is one, Frontier, even Sun Country, in a sense, you know, are these regional carriers that can become a major national. And with these moves into the East Coast large hub markets, Frontier is moving towards that. They now have connecting service from many of these East Coast hubs into Denver. And so we're building a more robust network that we can plug into. Denver specifically is our third largest market by passengers and our third largest market by revenue, number of tickets purchased, and our fifth largest market by number of passengers. So just the Denver opportunity is so huge for our market that if we can get the average ticket price down, it generates a tremendous amount of traffic. And I don't have the slides with me now, but the busiest years the airport has ever experienced were during the Frontier years. You know, our goal would be to keep them in the market long term. This time around, the incentive dollars that are being offered are exclusively from the TBID to the airline. So they're offering a pool of dollars to bring it in. On to seats. One of the ways that so if you're looking at trying to attract larger planes into your market, you know, you're not allowed to offer incentives to the airline for the class of service. You can offer incentives through the SCASD program for a new market, but you can't classify that as I need a big plane or I need a small plane, anything like that. If we use the SCASD program, the funds have to be just a new market. You have to say, I want service to California, or I want service to Texas, anything like that. So you know, that is one way you can't incentivize the airline. If you look at the seats today, our flights are full year-round. The existing carriers we have, you know, are in a sense a happy triopoly where they know their planes are going to be full. And they've sized it perfectly for our market so that month in and month out, they average 80% loads. They're not interested. It wouldn't matter how much money we threw at them. To get them out of the regional partnership with SkyWest into a mainline airplane is not in their interest. And to that point, Delta has actually outsourced the entire Salt Lake City route to SkyWest. They don't control pricing, they don't control schedule times or anything else. SkyWest runs that route because Delta isn't interested in the route for anything other than hub feed into Salt Lake City. So it's a change in philosophy to get an airline to move to a mainline route. What we have to do is grow the demand and show that we need more seating and move that direction in order to get that new plane in here. And we're starting to see flashes of that now with what we've been doing with Delta in the summertime where they're bringing that mainline plane in. We've done that by putting competition against it. They reacted to the Chicago flight by moving to a mainline plane.
To Minneapolis.
Yes. So we have to get some raw meat in there and get some competition and get them out of that happy triopoly enough that they're hungry for market share in order to get the market to move. It's a very predictable market at this point, year in and year out, the last 4 or 5 years. I can tell you what the volumes are going to be. The airlines know what the volumes are going to be, and they've got it sized right in the sweet spot where they can get price and the plane full. Getting them out of that mindset, when I went to see Delta a few years ago, I mean, they said, you know, we're happy with our pricing in Great Falls. I mean, that is their bottom line. We've got to do something to the market to make it move. And that something is bringing a Frontier in or other service in that puts some fluctuation in the price. You don't have to look any further than what's happening in Missoula right now, where bringing in American Airlines has created that instability where every one of the carriers reprices and has to think about how am I going to get that plane full because there's extra capacity in that market. And so you need another pry bar in there, a new city or a new airline in order to make those things happen. It's really what makes the market move.
Yeah. And JC, I'm an airline commuter. I know exactly what your flight attendants are talking about. Problem is going to a 76-seater with first-class service coming in here, the first-class seats will be wide open and they won't get paid for. And
You're right.
you're not getting to, because Great Falls is basically an overgrown farm town with a blue-collar market, so people aren't going to pay for those first-class seats. It's either going to be United, mileage upgrades, or it's going to go empty and us jump seaters will get it, which would be awesome. But they're not going to make money off of it, unfortunately. So they're happy where they're at, number one. And number two, there's just not enough of them out there. We're so short of RJs that the bigger RJs are going to the Chicago markets, filling Madison, Wisconsin, where you have a population base, even Billings, Bozeman, and Missoula, that is much bigger than ours and has a much higher ability to pay for those first-class seats. So the 50-seaters are where we're at because that's what our economy in Great Falls will hold.
And that's the feedback we've gotten from a couple of the carriers, that in Helena, which is a smaller market than us, they buy, not use premium points, but they buy the first-class seats there. And so they make a profit based on just the first-class cabin, and then whatever they can fill in economy is somewhat gravy. And so that was the reaction I got from them. We were talking about first-class seats into Great Falls. They said, yeah, that would be great for our diamond numbers, but we don't get any money on that.
Yeah.
They're going to pay a coach ticket, and they're going to get that first-class seat. So we're further down the scale than even Helena because we don't sell them the first-class seats. I think all of this is going to change with the 50-seater, though, in the next year and a half as the two terminals open in Denver and in Salt Lake. Because what happens in both those communities right now, and those hubs now, is there's dedicated 50-seat gates that can't fit anything else. And so in the new terminal expansions, neither of those airports have only 50-seat gates. Those gates are being wiped out, and they can handle a larger RJ. And so what we've been hearing from the route planners is that is probably the divorce point for the 50-seat regional partner. And so unfortunately, some of the carriers have pilot clauses that don't allow them to fly with their partners 76 seats or 90-seat airplanes. Those have to be mainline pilots, which dramatically increases the cost of the airplane to fly it because a pilot gets paid 3 times more than what a regional pilot does. So we're going to go through this hoop again of, is the market feasible with the current revenue picture with a larger plane? And so you're going to see, like we did with the 36-seaters, you're going to see some markets wash out. Toledo, Ohio is a good example. That's a big town, lost all their air service, everything, a few years back. They got it back with a different carrier, but they went 2 years. Santa Rosa, California, a very big community, lost everything. And so, again, this is why we want to bring in something to spur the market. I wish I had it today, and I don't. But if you look at the market after Frontier, we jumped up from, say, I think it was 150,000 boardings, all the way up to 194 with Frontier in the market. We've held, since Frontier left, at 180 level. We never went back to 150. We need one more bump to get us to that plateau again, bring the ticket price down, get us back to that plateau and push us over 200,000. If we get over that 200,000 mark, I think the 76-seaters twice a day can replace some of these routes that are twice a day on a 50-seater and get them full and get them economically feasible.
So you can tell your flight attendants all that. Got that?
I recorded the entire conversation.
Excellent.
I think are you still at Husky and, what is it, Husky and Hats? I've got your email. I'll send you a PowerPoint that shows you some of that.
Okay. I'll pass it along.
All right. Any further business or with the board? All right. No,
we didn't. We missed it. A couple.
We haven't got to the
Oh, we haven't
Not
got
work session. All right. So, with no further business to the main airport meeting agenda, I declare this meeting adjourned. Let's take a 3-minute break, real quick pit stop, and let's come back here and we'll press through the items for the work session. You good?
Yeah. John, how long is it going to anticipate the rest of it?
Not very long.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we might get hung up on the road agreement.
Right.